And I'm joined now by former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, the Republican candidate for the Senate in the state of Maryland. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. So the first presidential debate between Trump and Harris, Kamala Harris, set to kick off tomorrow night. There's going to be a lot of spotlight on her, a lot of spotlight on him. What do you think we're going to see?
I'm not sure what I think we're going to see, but what I'm hoping that we'll see is an actual debate of the issues. I mean, as I'm out there on the campaign trail every day, there are things that people are really concerned about affordability and the economy, about crime, about, securing the border and fixing our broken immigration system. On the campaign trail, we haven't heard a lot of substance, frankly, from either one of them. And I'm just hoping that we have a real discussion of the issues and not just more of the kind of angry fighting we see all day on television and out on the campaign trail.
Yeah. I want to talk about former President Trump's comments about January 6th in recent weeks. You've actually been running ads on the fact that you took actions to protect the Capitol on January 6th. Here's a clip from one of your ads.
And on January 6th, as we watched in horror, Hogan didn't just talk about defending democracy, he did something, sending in the Maryland National Guard to protect the Capitol. That's the same Larry Hogan. Tough, independent, never backs down.
So this comes as over the weekend, Mr. Trump posted on Truth Social about people that he accuses falsely of cheating in the 2020 election. He says in part, quote, "When I win, those people that cheated will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long prison sentences so that this depravity of justice does not happen again." That must bother you. That's kind of contrary to your message.
Well, not just contrary to my message, but to everything I believe in. And, obviously I've been one of the most outspoken critics since the moment that Donald Trump came down the escalator. As the commercial said, one of the only Republicans who never caved. But, I was disgusted by the talk about the stolen election and disgusted by what happened on January 6th. And, the leaders of Congress were reaching out to me, desperately asking for help. We sent the Maryland State Police and the Maryland National Guard. And, the next day I called on President Trump to resign and let Mike Pence finish out a peaceful transition of power.
Do you worry at all that Trump might come after you if he wins? Because you were on the side of election integrity and law and order and all the things that he's against in this context.
I'm not afraid of it, that's for sure. I've always been willing to stand up, and he's lashed out at me a few times. But look, I battled life-threatening cancer. A few mean tweets from Donald Trump aren't going to bother me.
How is your health, by the way?
I'm doing great. I've never been healthier.
Last week I spoke with your Democratic Senate opponent, Angela Brooks, from Prince George's County. Her message to Democrats in the state of Maryland, where there are more Democrats than Republicans, is that even though you're not a MAGA Republican, you are, in fact, still a Republican. Take a listen.
He was recruited to run in this race by Mitch McConnell. He just 2 years ago vetoed abortion care legislation in the state of Maryland, who refused to sign legislation that would have banned ghost guns. He vetoed legislation that would have given sensible waiting period for long guns. And so we know that many of the policies of this Republican Party are ones that Larry Hogan, as governor, favored those policies.
Your response?
Well, sadly, my opponent's entire campaign is based on lies. So Mitch McConnell had nothing to do with recruiting me into the race. I know he tried to convince me 2 years ago to run for a different race, but I didn't choose to do it. My position on abortion has been very clear. I've been opposed to a national abortion ban for more than 30 years, some on record since 1992. When I ran for governor, I promised to uphold access to abortion, and I delivered on that promise. I've promised to sponsor a bill to codify Roe and to sponsor a bill on IVF. She continues to lie and say I'm against abortion.
What's she referring to when she says you vetoed abortion care legislation?
Well, there was a bill that it was all about women's safety, which I still strongly disagree with, and you can have a difference of opinion, but this bill was to lower the standards of care to allow for non-licensed professionals to provide abortions rather than doctors, nurses, and physicians' assistants. And I thought it was a mistake and rolling back the clock and putting women in danger. But it had nothing to do with getting between a woman and her doctor, or nothing to do with providing abortions in the state, which have, we have protected women's rights. No one should get between a woman and her doctor. But this wasn't about doctors. It was non-licensed professionals.
What about the legislation she talked talks about it in terms of ghost guns and long guns.
Well, there was a battle over some of the details on that, but look, I'm for a universal background checks. I signed a red flag law. I signed a bill on bump stocks, and I'm pushing for more common sense solutions on this issue. But we have the toughest gun laws in America, and yet we still have people being murdered on the streets nearly every other day, including in Prince George's County, where murders are up 100%.
Yeah, and there was that shooting at the high school last week. Really awful.
I've reached out to the sheriff and talked with them, and it's look, I put in, after a school shooting at Great Mills High School in St. Mary's County, I pushed through the legislature a requirement to have armed school resource officers in every single high school and provided all the funding to the local governments. My opponent is withdrawing school safety out of Prince George's County where people are being shot.
In March, you said you were not going to vote for President Biden for re-election, although you're not. You also said you're not voting for Trump. What about Kamala Harris?
Yeah, my position is really the same. I mean, quite frankly, I have serious policy differences, and obviously my concerns about Donald Trump are well known. Neither one of them has earned my vote. It's not going to be much of an impact in the election because, Kamala Harris is winning Maryland by 32 points, but it's not going to impact those electoral votes in Maryland.
You have said you have not sought Donald Trump's endorsement in the race. Would you appear with him if he came to Maryland to campaign?
No, I actually rejected his endorsement when he tried to endorse me, and I'm not supporting him, and no, I wouldn't be campaigning with him.
All right, former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, thanks so much. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Jake.